You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. All right, folks, ever since I had my show, first on TV One Washington Watch in 2009, News One Now in 2013, and of course launching Roland Martin Unfiltered last year, we've been focused on Republican-led voter suppression. The facts don't lie. That's what we have seen across this country. Well, last year, 14 million Americans were purged from voter rolls across the country. They were mostly black and poor or students. Joining me right now to discuss his investigation into voter purging is investigative journalist Greg Palast. Greg, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Glad to be with you, Roland.
I make this point all the time, and the bottom line is this here. When it comes to people who are purging voter rolls, it is largely Republicans who are leading this effort in states across the country. Fact or fiction?
It's a sad fact. It's Jim Crow all over again. You know, in the 50s and 40s, 50s, and 60s, it was the Democratic Party who blocked black voters in the South. Now that's the GOP. And it's real simple. It's not that I don't really believe that characters like Brian Kemp are racist. That's the governor of Georgia, I call him the Purgeon General of America. What he cares about is the color of your vote, which is blue. That is Democratic. You have Democrats, you have black folk, Hispanics, and now Asian Americans in Georgia are voting substantially Democratic, as are young people. If they let everyone vote, Georgia will be a solid blue state. Same with Mississippi. Same with Alabama, same with Florida. They know it, and therefore the only way they can win is by removing voters of color. That's it.
Look, you talked about that. In fact, a Republican strategist said in North Carolina, on the record, that if black folks were the ones voting Republican, Republicans in North Carolina would not be trying to suppress their vote. For me, it doesn't matter what your party is. I don't care. Just like I disagreed in 2000 when the Gore campaign tried to throw out some military ballots because they said more than likely they're going to be for Bush as over Gore. My deal is no. You count every vote. It doesn't matter where they come from. And the Republican Party, it was Colin Powell, when he went to North Carolina, called out the then Republican governor of North Carolina and said, stop trying to disenfranchise and take the vote away from African Americans.
That's right. Back in 2000, I was with The Guardian. And by the way, I'm joining The Guardian again out of England, because in England, they really are watching vote suppression in America. You don't have much of a following of this issue by, unfortunately, my U.S. colleagues in the press. But back in 2000 with The Guardian and BBC Television, I uncovered that, tens of thousands of black men were removed from the voter rolls as felons. Not one. Their only crime was voting all black. There was not one illegal voter. Not one. George Bush became president by 537 votes, minus the tens of thousands of black folk voting. When you talk about, what is the Republicans' line on this? One of the main people I spoke to, a Reverend Thompson, he was removed from the voter rolls, an African-American minister. When he was forced by the lawsuits that came out of my investigation, they said now he can vote. He went in and he registered, by the way, as a Republican. And they said, well, if we knew you were a Republican, we'd have let you register in the first place. They literally said that to him. If we knew you were a Republican, we'd have let you register. He just saw black minister, obviously a Democrat. He may want to think his position, by the way.
That is, and look, Malik's on my show. He's a Trump supporter. He's a Republican. And he's like, hey, you always criticize Republicans on this. But this, to me, is very clear. The Republican Party understands that their voters are largely white. They know that black and brown people vote against them because of their policies. And if they actually got their policies right, they probably would be able to compete for black and brown votes. But they don't. And so they are appealing to white voters on these issues. And I'm going to keep calling them out. But what they're trying to do, Greg, is they're trying to literally steal elections. They want to shrink the voting rolls because when there's a smaller voting population, they win. Larger turnout, they lose. Bernie Sanders literally said that a few days ago.
That's correct. And the Reverend Jackson and I, Jesse Jackson and I, were talking to Bernie Sanders, one of the few people who's actually saying, hey, we have to make this an issue. Everyone should be allowed to vote. Now, when you have to understand the massive size of this purge, you mentioned 14 million people in the last year. We know I actually sued Brian Kemp, Secretary of State of Georgia, while he was running against Stacey Abrams for governor of Georgia. And he had removed 500,000 voters from the voter rolls. I sued him, got the voter rolls, got the names and the addresses of people he purged. He said those people had left the state or moved out of their county. My experts went through that sheet and found out that in Georgia alone, he had illegally removed 340,134 voters. That's 1/3 voters. We're not sampling. We have their names and addresses, and that's what we're fighting to get those people back on in my investigations. And Georgia isn't alone. Brian Kemp made himself governor of Georgia, winning over Stacey Abrams by a few thousand votes by removing hundreds of thousands of black folk, including, by the way, Martin Luther King's 92-year-old cousin. She'd voted the same station for 50 years. I was there when they threw her out of the voting station. 92-year-old cousin of Martin Luther King, voting every year, every election since her cousin was murdered. We are taking this investigation to Ohio, to Michigan, to Wisconsin, to Mississippi and North Carolina and other states where we know that they are illegally and wrongly purging people. Our experts, we've filed legal actions in 26 states so far, and we expect to get those lists, and I'll be reporting on that, well, for Roland Martin, Unfiltered, and the Guardian newspapers.
Well, look, Greg, anytime you want to come on the show, you are more than welcome. This is a critical issue, one that I have focused a significant number of years of my career on, because I don't care who it is. I don't care if you are white, if you're black, Latino, Asian, if you're young, old, if you're gay, straight, doesn't matter. You should not have your vote taken. It should be done fair and square. And bottom line is, if you want to beat people, beat them on the issues. Don't beat them by cheating. Greg Palast, where can people actually contribute to help your project? Where should they go?
To gregpalast.com. Gregpalast.com. You can see a little film about the work I did in Georgia in 2018 that we're going to take nationwide. And I always appreciate tax-deductible donations, but we're doing this work. They can't stop us, and I'll keep reporting for you, Roland. Thank you.
All right, Greg, thanks a lot. GREGPALAST.com. Greg, thanks a lot.
You're the best. Thank you. Bye.
All right, thank you. All right, Mellet, what the hell's up with your party? Why can't they win fair and square? Why cheat?
As I've said, each time we've had this convenient conversation on your show, I don't agree with any effort to suppress the vote. I think that the more people who are allowed to vote, whether it's college campuses or whatever the case may be, I fully support that. I kind of chuckled just a little bit when I heard your guest say that but for voter suppression efforts, Mississippi and Alabama would be solidly blue. I mean, I don't know what he's using to make that assumption, but I don't believe it as someone who's from Mississippi himself. But yeah, I don't agree with any efforts to suppress the votes. There's some a lot of conversations that people have that people are, say, well, this is voter suppression versus that's voter suppression. If it's something we were talking about something like voter ID laws or something, a lot of people feel like that's voter suppression. I personally don't. I'm not opposed to the idea that I'd have to show my ID when I go into a polling place, but I understand that many people do believe that that's voter suppression. But I don't agree with, outside of that, I don't agree with the efforts to suppress the vote.
Well, Julian, it is voter suppression when you limit the places where you can get the driver's license. It's voter suppression when you have to force people who don't have a driver's license, to, especially those who are elderly, to come into a location, fill an application out, an affidavit, have to then go back and then get approved and come back in and pick up your ID, like what happened in Pennsylvania. That's why in 2012, the leading Republican in Pennsylvania said, he said, because of voter ID, Mitt Romney is going to win Pennsylvania. Think about that. He said with voter ID. In 2016, Julian, the Obama Department of Justice approved the voter ID plan of Wisconsin, but what happened? A federal judge called in then Governor Scott Walker's office saying, why are you dragging your feet in the issuing of voter IDs? Upwards of 200,000 people in Wisconsin were impacted as a result of the voter ID law. Then, of course, you had the whole issue in Ohio when Ken Blackwell was Secretary of State, saying that the weight of the paper did not actually meet the state standard. I believe the state standard was 70-pound paper, and then it was a 60-pound paper. They even tried that one. Then, of course, you also had in Ohio, Julian, in 2012, when the Obama campaign had to sue Ohio because in the counties where Republicans led the state board of elections 3-2, they extended voting hours. And in those counties, where the Republicans led voting efforts, yes, they extended those hours. In areas where Democrats led, they actually restricted voting hours. All of that is voter suppression, Julian.
Absolutely. There has been a conscious effort to deny people their right to vote. I love Greg Palast. He does such great work. He's been documenting this for some time. But the fact is that I think the IDs are voter suppression. I think that what they did with polling places in Georgia, let's say in 2018, at Clark Atlanta University, at one of the voting places, they had 10 machines, but only 3 of them were working. They waited until within an hour of the polls closing to bring some working machines. Meanwhile, students were lined up around the block because they wanted to vote. They wanted to vote for Stacey Abrams. Brian Kemp stole that election just like someone shoplifts, in the store. He literally stole that election. And quite frankly, Andrew Gillum was so close that you might look at whether or not his election was stolen as well. What Greg Palast said is true. When you have a large pool, Democrats tend to win. When you restrict the pool, Republicans tend to win. The Democratic base is blacker, browner, younger. The Republican base is old and basically white. Milk is an exception to the rule, of course. There are a couple others. But basically, that's the difference there. And they have had a concentrated effort. North Carolina screams to my mind, where they basically have made it difficult for students to vote. Students live on campus 9 months a year. That's their home. But they made it difficult for students to vote. They've moved polling places around. In 2016, one particular county went from having 8 polling places in 2012 to 2 in 2016. So that's voter suppression. In Mississippi, some people had to go as many as 40 miles to get to a polling place. That's voter suppression. And it is conscious, it's deliberate. Let's just look at the 3 states that 45 won: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. In each one of those cases, you have a narrative about voter suppression. In Michigan and Detroit, they lost 10,000 ballots. I mean, who loses 10,000 ballots? That could have been the margin of difference. So the message for Democrats is we have to fight harder, fight longer, and ensure that there's fairness. The Lawyers Committee of Civil Rights Under Law often has lawyers monitoring even as voting is going on because some people are not being allowed to vote.
Kelly, according to the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, folks, you can go to their website, www.democracydiverted.org. They say since the Supreme Court rendered its decision that weakened the Voting Rights Act, across the South, they have closed 1,200 polling locations since that took place 6 years ago. That is also voter suppression, Kelly.
It's absolutely voter suppression. And what's sad is that the Voting Rights Act was more or less pretty weak. Like, it needed more legislation to truly strengthen it so that we wouldn't have these type of issues anymore. I kind of liken it to a rickety wheel so to speak, the Voting Rights Act, and the Supreme Court basically took out major spokes of that wheel, such that it's almost not sustainable without those spokes anymore. And what happens? You know, like you have a vehicle or what have you, you know, not being able to drive it, and we have to use what's left of this act to continue to move forward. And that not only is it frustrating, it's just wrong. Dr. Malveaux, definitely, I echo her points, but at the same time, this goes back to our conversation regarding elections and packing the courts with judges and all of these things. That it's all connected. It's all connected. So,
absolutely. No, you're absolutely right when you say it's all connected, because again, it is all a part of a Republican strategy. According to the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, 1 in 10 voting locations in Texas were closed. In Arizona, more than 1 in 5 polling locations were closed. Georgia, Louisiana, and Mississippi closed roughly 1 in 20 polling locations. So when you take the purging of the voter rolls, then when you take the closing of polling locations, and you throw in voter ID, what you have is a witch's brew created by Republicans to frustrate voters, to say, I'm just so sick of it, I don't even want to go to the polling location. And that's why, folks, we're going to fight that, we're going to counter that, and so we're going to beat them at their game early. And that's why we got to make sure you have all the information that you need, because Republicans, if you want to win fair and square, but don't cheat. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, it's the holiday season. This is when you think about spending time with the family and friends. This is also when you count your blessings and support those less fortunate. This year, be a holiday hero and change someone's life forever. Right now, hundreds of thousands of Americans are sitting in jail without being convicted of a crime. Why? Because they lack the financial resources to pay their bail. Now think about it. If you are arrested for any minor offense, you will be taken directly to jail. If you don't have bail money, you will stay there until a court date is scheduled. That could be days, weeks, or even months. Simply put, America's bail system is broken for people of color. Freedom, folks, should be free. That's why the Ebony Foundation has partnered with the Bail Project and is sponsoring the Home by the Holiday campaign. The Bail Project has helped bail out thousands of people over the years. And with your help, we plan to bail out 1,000 people by New Year's Day. How's that for a holiday gift? A donation from you today can change someone's life tomorrow. Did you know people of color represent upwards of 90% of the jail population across the country? Without bail, nearly 90% of those charged with misdemeanors plead guilty. However, with paid bail, less than 2% receive a jail sentence. Folks, sometimes justice needs just us to fight to join the fight. You can be a holiday hero by donating $25, $50 or more to help the Ebony Foundation bring our brothers and sisters home by the holiday. To donate, go to homebytheholiday.com. It's homebytheholiday.com. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video. Folks, there's this extremely popular black-owned restaurant in Houston called the Turkey Leg Hut. They do these smoked turkey legs. And look, y'all, I am not a huge fan of turkey or even smoked turkey legs, but the food there is unbelievable. I've been there many times. You can go to Instagram, Facebook. You can see my videos from there. But they were in court today where they had filed an emergency motion to dissolve a temporary restraining order put in place by white neighbors who say the restaurant is a threat to their health. They claim the restaurant's outdoor cooking area is illegal and the smoke is a health hazard. This was a news conference where the owners of the restaurant went before the public on Friday. The neighbors, what they did was they got that particular order preventing them from using their smokers between 8 p.m. and 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. And of course, that's their most busiest times. Thousands go to this restaurant every single week because of the turkey legs. They've taken Houston by storm, but these white residents who recently moved in want them shut down. Here's that news conference from Friday.
On Wednesday morning, November 20th, 2019, our attorney was blindsided by a telephone call from the plaintiff's counsel stating that he would be in Harris County District Court in roughly an hour to appear before a judge to seek an emergency temporary restraining order, temporary injunction, and permanent injunction against the Turkey Leg Hut and its owners. The affidavit of their named specialist was never shared with our attorney, nor was he provided adequate notification time to represent us in court on Wednesday morning. The lawsuit was filed by a handful of people who want to vilify the Turkey Leg Hut as a nuisance to the community. We have successfully operated our business in compliance and cooperation with the City of Houston and its ordinances, despite repeated attacks from this handful of people on parking, noise, and now smoke for the past 2 years. It is difficult not to presume that they simply don't want us here. And Wednesday's lawsuit was a failed attempt to permanently shut down the Turkey Leg Hut. With regard to the allegations in the lawsuit that the smoke from our turkey smokers is a public health risk, the plaintiffs and their counsel have a private party posing as the City of Houston Health Department. The allegations are purely speculative and with no proof whatsoever. Contrary to what the plaintiffs are saying, the Turkey Leg Hut currently has all of the permitting that we need to operate. We want to be very clear. We care deeply about the people in this community, as well as our employees, customers, and the City of Houston. We have heard and listened to the handful of complaints about the smoke from neighboring residents and have been actively pursuing a resolution in response to those complaints. On September 25th, 2019, we received approval from a permit for the construction of a ventilated, fully enclosed smoke pit area to resolve the problem. Before construction can begin, approval of a replat is required by the city, as the pit is currently located on the subdivision line, and the city will not allow structures to be built over the subdivision line. A public meeting was held by the City of Houston Planning Committee on October 31st, 2019. At this meeting, the Planning Committee required us to present our plans to the Museum Park Super Neighborhood, which we did. At the Museum Park Super Neighborhood meeting held just last week on Wednesday, November 13, 2019, a handful of neighborhood residents showed up to oppose us building the enclosure that will solve the very problem that they filed the lawsuit on this past week. Despite the opposition, we answered all questions regarding the replat, as well as questions regarding the pit area.
All right, folks. Now here's the deal. Okay, so they they went to court today trying to get it lifted. I'm still waiting. I'm texting the owners right now to find out, of course, what actually happened. But check this out. Y'all about to really trip out. I got my hands on an email. And first of all, part of the ruling today when we went to court, they included in their motion some of what's in this email. But yeah, I got my hands on the email. And y'all ought to see the crap that these folks actually said in the email. The email was written by this guy, Matthew Trail. The email is from October 5th, 2019. This is what he writes. Chris Feldman is their lawyer. Chris thinks we have a good case going forward on the nuisance issues such as smoke and noise in the city's non-enforcement. He is going to research if there are permit deed restriction ways that we can prevent the parking lot, but he says that does not fold as neatly into the nuisance complaint as the other issues. Still, it will be part of the overall nuisance complaint, and if we are successful, we might be able to stop it altogether. Then he says the best idea from yesterday is Chris is going to create the special mini neighborhood organization to bring the suit. This is good news for us because it means none of us have to bring the suit in our own names. We will essentially all just be members of this organization that, quote, decided to sue. They have that in quotation marks. It should shield us somewhat from individual discovery requests and makes litigation a lot simpler for Chris's firm. We need a name for the organization, so feel free to suggest. Greater Rosedale Protection Association, Alameda Quality of Life, the Justice Society of Tomorrow, I don't know yet. This organization will sue on our behalf, and we all would just be its members. The money that you contribute would just be toward your membership, and you would not have to say that you are directly funding a lawsuit. in boldface, this does not mean complete anonymity. Your name as a member would still be out there. It just means the litigation does not have to be in our individual names. We're thinking that Josh and I will be managers and someone else will be the president. I'm going to invite the MPNA to join as well and also ask them for money if they have any. Chris is committed to keeping our costs to a temporary injunction to $20,000. We will know by that point what sort of defense they will have and what sort of success we are having. It is still very important that you all join an organization and contribute to the lawsuit. We still need to raise the money. The organization is still just us working together. But I got y'all email. We need to collect money from everyone. No one is demanding a specific amount, but please contribute what you can. Let Josh or me know when we can come by and pick up checks. Everything will be held in a trust account by Chris's firm. Please make the checks out to Feldman and Feldman PC. All right, y'all, now check this out. The next big thing is record keeping. Chris asked that from now on we take video of anything that looks like nuisance. If you're out and you see a loud car or motorcycle, take video. People peeing on your fence, video. Drunk folks staggering back, video. Smoke billowing through the neighborhood, video. Loud music, video. I know most of us might have thought about avoiding our homes next Sunday for the street party. They had a festival, y'all. But he said to take video of that especially. All nuisance in whatever form, we need to video from now on. This is the key. The ultimate goal of this litigation is obviously for the turkey-leg hut to be somewhere else and not on our corner. But that cannot be the stated goal. Let me read that again, y'all.
Wow.
The ultimate goal of this litigation is obviously for the TOH, Turkey-Leg Hut, to be somewhere else and not on our corner. But that cannot be the stated goal. So we also need to think of injunction relief that we can ask for, such as cook off-site or build a sort of filter that no one would ever know you're cooking, no music past 9 p.m., no use of bass or subwoofers at all, signs up telling their patrons to keep the noise down, no parking lot. If no parking lot is not possible, then I was thinking that they have to provide an officer there to keep the peace. Hopefully we can just stop the lot, some sort of monitoring system for both noise and smoke that will result in them being fined if they go over. If you have other suggestions, please give them to us. Now, let me explain to y'all. This thing is so popular that the owners bought several nearby lots because of all the people who are coming there. This, y'all, is a historic black neighborhood. 3rd Ward is where JFK's high school, my high school is. That's where Texas Southern University is. Alameda Road, where Houston, like literally across the street from Turkey-Leg Hut, is KCOH Radio, the most historic black radio station in Houston. That's where Skipper Lee Frazier, all the artists used to come in, all the Motown people. Alameda Road used to be the corridor of black businesses in 3rd Ward. It's just across the freeway. But what has happened is these former colonizers, now gentrifiers, have moved into these areas, and now they want to move out these black businesses. We've seen this all around the country. In Oakland, where you had a white guy moving into a traditionally black neighborhood, called the cops on a black church where they were actually having choir rehearsal on a Wednesday, and said that the noise coming from inside of the church was too loud. You've had, of course, where the black drummers in Harlem, they've been beating their drums every Sunday for decades. White folks moved in, called the cops. We want them to stop making noise beating those drums. Luther Campbell talked about the exact same thing happened there in Miami. Black neighborhood, whites moved in, wanted the traditional black things to stop, saying y'all are making too much noise. What you're seeing here are white residents in Houston specifically targeting one of the most popular restaurants in the city in an historic neighborhood, and they want them to leave. You heard them say, we don't want them on our corner. Kelly, this is what is happening in black neighborhoods nationwide that are changing. We saw with the go-go music in Washington, D.C., where they said, oh my God, turn that stuff down, and it was due to protest where the brother who owned that store brought the music back. But that's what we're seeing, where white folks are moving into black areas and changing the culture. Last one for you, Kelly, Shiloh Baptist Church, right there in Washington, D.C. White folks have moved in and said, y'all have too much parking on Sundays. is where people go to church. They literally are trying to force Shiloh Baptist Church out of the neighborhood they've been in for more than a half a century. Kelly.
I was going to actually make the point about Don't Mute DC, because this is definitely akin to that. But the fact that this is an email that went out to God knows who and how many people, how is this not a modern-day Willie Lynch letter? Because this was almost a step-by-step process as to how to move Black people out of spaces that they've been in for decades, if not, more than that. For you to not be there and then all of a sudden just come into somebody else's space, and because you don't like how they conduct business in their space that you just got into, all of a sudden it's a problem. But the more obvious thing is, isn't Texas like a huge barbecue state? Like, don't they have smoke everywhere because of restaurants? Like,
first of all, you don't even have zoning restrictions, and so you can actually in Houston have a business right next to a home. You don't have that. And that's one of the issues you have. They're trying to get it shut down.
Like, I just don't understand how you are in Texas, of all states, which, for Texans, they would probably consider themselves the, king and, presidents of barbecue, what have you. I'm not going into that debate, but it's a big deal there. That is a part of a culture.
Don't hate. We are.
No. I literally don't know. Like, that's
right.
I don't know. But what I'm saying is, barbecue is a part of the culture of Texas. Of Texas in general, and you have the audacity, the testicular fortitude to go into Texas and say, don't smoke no meat. Like, that to me is just absurd. And the fact that they are going so far as to literally have a step-by-step process as to how to dismantle a culture in Houston that is insidious, that is harassment. I don't see how this is not malice and malicious. If anything, I would countersue and sue, I don't know what the elements are in Texas, but intentional infliction of emotional distress is certainly something that I thought of.
Gotcha. Negligence,
harassment, slander, libel. I mean, just pile the book on it, because this is ridiculous. This is absolutely absurd.
Julian, the couple who owns it, they actually live in the neighborhood. They're from the neighborhood. But again, we're seeing this all around the country. This is happening all around the country.
Yes, it is. And, it not only is it gentrification, Roland, it's also economic suppression, because these people have put their heart and soul into this business. You could tell as the sister was reading her letter, put her heart and soul into this business, and they want to take it because it inconveniences them. That was just like the white boy who said Howard University should move. When Howard said that they didn't want random dogs running around their campus. He actually, Howard should move.
I don't want to get mad all over again, because that was...
No, but Roland, you got the smoking gun. I don't know how you got the email, but congratulations for getting it, because guess what? That man who signed that email, he says, we want to hide and we don't want anybody to be liable. Dude, you are liable. And the law firm is liable as well. They want to hide because they don't want to be sued. This couple needs to sue them for their homes, their automobiles, and everything else they have. This is just insidious, and it's happening, as you say, all over the country, where Black folks have built up a base, and not only a base, a historic base, and folks want to come and get it. Now they'll say stuff like, oh, it's the market. No, it's not the market. It's your caucasity. That's all it is.
There it is.
Melik, first of all, first of all, here's what happened. The Turkey Leg Hut owners got a hold of this email, went to court today at 2 p.m. The ruling came down that Turkey Leg Hut has been allowed to resume their normal meat smoking hours following an emergency hearing Tuesday afternoon. Owners Nakia Price and Lindell Price asked for the emergency motion to dissolve the temporary restraining order against the restaurant or the bond be raised. A judge has allowed them to resume their normal smoking hours until their next hearing on December 9th. They were restricted. Now they can go back. But again, the hearing was because of that email, because that judge now sees the real intention of these residents. This is an issue that, again, to Black folks all across this country, we are seeing this and experiencing this right here in Houston. We're seeing it in Harlem. We're seeing it in Oakland. We've seen it in Miami. We've seen this in Chicago, where again, these traditional Black customs, black things that black folks have done for decades are being impacted by whites coming in saying, no, you can't do this. Remember the woman out in Oakland who told a black man he couldn't barbecue when there were no rules against it? And of course, she called the cops. Well, hell, they've had barbecue parties every weekend ever since then. But this is what black people are experiencing. Here you have a black couple, a hugely successful restaurant, only open 2 years. Thousands are coming through. Yesterday, they partnered with Joe Young, a basketball player, professional basketball player, handed out 3,000 turkey legs to the community for Thanksgiving. And these folks want them run out of the neighborhood that they grew up in.
Yeah, I think it's I'm glad you actually brought up the cases here in D.C. And just to be clear about the one with the go-go music, there are people who can reasonably disagree whether a owner of a store should be allowed to place a loudspeaker outside of his store. I mean, that people can reasonably argue that that's a nuisance. I get the culture argument, but people can reasonably argue that. As far as the Shiloh Baptist Church deal, parking is pretty scarce in D.C., and that's in the Logan Circle area. And for as long as I've been in D.C., the conversation about churches and parking and even bike lanes has been a huge conversation. And that's not really a racial thing as people are making. As far as the situation, the situation in Texas, from what I'm hearing, it seems as if that there was an actual issue there with the smoke. Because the owner said that they actually are now in the process of getting the permits or something to have an enclosed space for that where it's proper venting or something. So it seems like that could be possibly a valid issue. Me personally, and of course I probably would move into a neighborhood like that, but I wouldn't want to live next to a store that has loudspeakers outside of its store all times of the day. I wouldn't want to live beside a restaurant or near a restaurant that has a smoker where there's a lot of the smoke and things like that. The issue with the nuisance part of it with the guests, I guess it's a lot of traffic or something. These are things that neighborhoods actually, whether it's a homeowners association or not, these are things that neighborhoods kind of get into. I think there's probably a bit of NIMBYism here, not in my backyard-ism going on here and what's happening in Texas, but they have the injunction, so they're going to be able to resume as usual. But I don't think that this is exactly as black and white as it is. I mean, there are plenty of people who can have issues with that same level of I know plenty of black people who would probably never move beside a building where they're playing loudspeakers outside of it. So I get the whole culture argument.
Roland, it is wrong. It is racial.
The reason this is a black and white issue, it is because this is not simply a one-off. Julian, I'm going to let you make this point, but the reality is here. We are seeing this in black neighborhoods across the country.
Yes.
Where literally things that black people have done for decades are being changed, are being eliminated because whites moving in are saying, we don't like these things. That is indeed black and white. Julian, go ahead.
But basically these colonizers, and that's what they are. They're colonizers who have a sense of entitlement. People have been playing go-go music in D.C., forever. You don't like it? Move. You knew they had go-go music when you went there. The churches. Shiloh has been there for I don't know how long, more than 50 years, more than 60 years. You knew there was a church in the neighborhood when you moved to the neighborhood. You don't like it? Step. This is black and white because white people have a disproportionate amount of power to basically affect these changes in these urban areas.
Yeah, the Shiloh issue, because I've lived in D.C. all of this time, and there are black people who have had these conversations, not just about Shiloh, but churches in general, and the amount of parking that people, and in D.C., just as it is with a lot of our schools, our schools here, there are a lot of residents who are not actually residents of D.C. They're coming from Maryland and Virginia into the city to park at these churches. So the parking thing has been an issue in D.C., whether you're black, white, Hispanic, or whatever. This has been a huge issue. So that's not a black and white issue.
But the way that people choose to go around,
churches should not have free reign to not just park, in particular with Shiloh, and just like it was with Metropolitan Baptist Church, which is probably about 3 or 4 blocks away from Shiloh. The issue was that there were the parishioners came into the city, and they were not just parking in zone parking spaces, they were double parking in those spaces. So there's a little nuance there that isn't just so white and black of people not
I
wanting
understand-
people.
I
mean, and I'm saying this as someone who knows black people who live in these neighborhoods where these churches are, and these black people have complained about the free reign churches have to park wherever they want to park, and they're not able to get to their front door because of the parking at the churches.
Prove it, Malik. Prove it. You're always asking people to prove something. Prove that, because I live in that.
You want me to invite them on the show or something?
I want affidavits. I mean, I live in that neighborhood as well. Everybody is kind of bent out of shape about parking, but most people, and most black people, are not so bent out of shape that they are wanting to church to move. In addition, some churches like John Wesley on the corner of 14th and Corcoran, they have a solution where they bought a parking lot, and so basically people can go into this enclosed parking lot. Yeah. My church, Metropolitan AME, we use a parking lot across the street. So everybody acknowledges parking is difficult in D.C. anytime. But the way that people have gone after these churches is nothing but racial.
Well, but what I'm saying, if I can make a point regarding the parking issue, absolutely. Across the board in D.C., parking is an issue. But what you don't see, which is why I believe this is a race issue, yes, they're dealing with Shiloh in this regard, but there are churches up and down 16th Street Northwest that haven't been touched by any type of injunction or complaint or anything like that regarding parking. There are churches up and down Northeast. Like, the closer you get to Capitol Hill, the less black people you see, but you also see more churches that are not rooted in African-American religion denominations. And I don't see anybody complaining about people parking there. So it is a race issue.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
Well, let me also say this here, because I love these people who so this Jeremy has awakened. Lovey said, we have Roland Martin, Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey, Byron Allen, Bill Cosby, along with other radio owners that are black radio stations, owners and crowdfunding. No excuses can be done. But let me go ahead and say this here, folks. I mean, that's great. But let me be real clear. It's a whole bunch of people who say what we need, but then who don't do a damn thing. I've gone to numerous other black media companies who aren't even doing anything remotely like what we're doing here, and they have been wanting to partner. I've gone to black folks with money and still trying to wrestle a dollar out of them. But also, when I have people who say, oh, we need to be doing this and this, the question is, are we actually willing to write a check?
Are we going to support it?
See, it's real simple. It's real simple to say we need this, but then what do we do? Wendy Thomas, the MLK 50, her business school person at Harvard said, oh, this idea will never work. Now they're going on their third anniversary, and they have been succeeding. I recently gave to their crowdfunding effort. We also have to treat our black media companies the same way black folks did when we only had black newspapers. Let me repeat that. The Chicago Defender was not free. The Pittsburgh Courier was not free. The Atlanta Daily World was not free. You had to pay for a subscription to those black papers. The reason Robert Abbott was able to send black people to the theaters across overseas to actually cover World War I and World War II, no, they weren't putting Associated Press stories in black papers. There were black people who were actually in the theaters of war. It's because black people were buying the newspapers. I can't tell y'all how many times black people say, oh, man, if you could cover this and cover that, but are you subscribing? But we'll subscribe to the Washington Post and the New York Times and other papers and then go, well, where's our stuff? Y'all, this ain't hard. When I say we were in Atlanta on Wednesday, cover the debate, I would have loved for us to do a pre-debate show with a panel and a post-debate show. But guess what? MSNBC, that was their debate, they were charging $6,500 for the riser, for the telephones, for the Ethernet lines. Oh, yeah, we just couldn't just walk in and set up. Had to be paid. So why am I saying this? We pay for a whole bunch of stuff. And y'all heard me say it, 8 black networks targeting African Americans, a combined 1,344 hours of content a week, and they don't have a single hour of black news. That means Lil Me is doing more black news than Oprah, Diddy, BT/Viacom, Kathy Hughes TV1, Bounce TV, now owned by Scripps, all of them combined. We have to support black-owned media. And if we don't, and then this show's not here, and we're not broadcasting, we're not streaming the Kamala Harris session she did with black women in Atlanta, or we're not broadcasting the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, their day-long seminar, or we're not broadcasting the live streaming when they had the rally for Congresswoman Ilhan Omar on Capitol Hill, when we're not broadcasting the AME protest that took place outside of the White House, who else will? Because guess what? The other black websites, they ain't there. The black networks, they're not there. Frankly, it's just us. So go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, join our Bring the Funk fan club. And this is real simple. We have 20,000 of our followers. Just so y'all understand, we did 100.7 million views last year alone. 345 million minutes watched. Took our YouTube channel from 130,000 subscribers to 400,000. Right now, that's in 14 months. If I check right now, we have 403,000 YouTube subscribers. That means we started at 130,000. So just so y'all know, if we just took the growth of our YouTube subscribers, okay? If we just took that growth, all right, and said, how do we grow this thing in a year? That means we added, real simple, 273,000 YouTube subscribers in 14 months. If each one of our YouTube subscribers actually gave simply $10, this funds this show for the next 3 years. That's black economics. That means we can send people on the campaign trail, we can hold town halls, we can broadcast all around the country. That funds us for the next 3 years, and that's assuming no future growth. Question is, are we willing to do it? Go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, Cash App, PayPal, Square, you name it. You got all the options there for you. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, as the marijuana momentum continues, our friends at marijuanastock.org have already reached more than half of their funding goal for the hemp CBD investment. That's right. If you want to take advantage of the great opportunity, you better do it real quick because it won't last much longer. If you don't know, I'm talking about the hemp plant, the good cousin to marijuana with a much higher concentration of CBD. That means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Also, if you don't know, hemp farming is now legal in the United States, creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. Now, folks, it's an opportunity for you to invest, and that's where 420 Real Estate comes in. The business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. As hemp continues to change the economic landscape, 420 Real Estate is allowing you to chase the American dream. Now, the best part is you can invest in this crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200. That's right, $200 up to 10 grand. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. Get in the game, folks, and get in the game now. Back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered. The mother of a Navy veteran is seeking answers after her son's body was discovered in his Texas apartment, where officials said he had been dead for 3 years. The remains of Ronald Wayne White were recovered on November 12th from the DeSoto Town Center Apartments, which is, of course, a suburb of Dallas. White's mother, Doris Stevens, said the last time she spoke to her son was 3 years ago in November, this month, November 2016. He was a defense contractor who was frequently out of the country, and his bills were paid through automatic withdrawals from his account. Maintenance personnel found his body when they responded to a service
issue. His mother did say that he suffered from diabetes, and they also found diabetic medication all throughout the apartment. But man, talk about that is the strangest thing in the world, that somebody could actually be missing not be heard of from for 3 years. That is, and what I'm trying to understand. Avis, is how does the company not contact this family? Like, he wasn't showing up for work.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a sad indictment on our society in terms of how we apparently don't have substantial relationships and connections with people. That someone can be laying dead in their house for 3 years. And you're right, the company doesn't notice that they're not showing up for work, or if they are noticing, they don't think to contact anyone just to make sure he's okay. I understand he spent a lot of time out of his country, but does he not communicate with his family when he's out of the country? I go out of the country too, but the entire time that I'm gone, I'm reaching out to my sons. I'm reaching out to people that I care about. So it just, to me, demonstrates how disjointed our society has gotten in some extreme circumstances. And I hope that with all that we each do in terms of our professional lives, that we also know that we shouldn't neglect our personal lives and our relationships, because at the end of the day, when we need somebody, when somebody needs to, it's the relationships that are going to matter when we're in situations like this.
Got it.
So someone will check on us, if at all we ever go missing.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
Yesterday, Diddy released an official statement basically telling Comcast to stop using my damn name. Now, of course, Comcast has been fighting Byron Allen over his lawsuit against him for not carrying his networks. They went to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court is going to rule on a portion of the lawsuit, which will determine whether the lawsuit can go forward and what legal argument he can use. So what Comcast has been doing, Comcast has been saying, hey, wait a minute. Look at all of these other black networks we provided opportunities to. They mentioned TV One. They mentioned Revolt. Of course, Diddy's network. They mentioned Aspire, which was given to Magic Johnson. My understanding, Aspire's now been sold. I'm trying to confirm that. I'll give more back details. They talked about Afro TV and some other black networks that they have actually put out there, as well as Latino networks. So Diddy dropped this letter. Let's just say he ain't too happy. My name and my network, Revolt, have been mentioned recently by Comcast in reference to the Comcast Byron Allen U.S. Supreme Court case as an example of Comcast's inclusive practices with respect to African-American owned cable networks. While it is true that we are in business with Comcast, it is not accurate to use my name or my network as an example of inclusion. I do not want my name to be used inaccurately, so I must speak my truth. I also want to make clear that this case is now about much more than cable distribution. It's about the civil rights of millions of African Americans and other minorities. First, it's important that people really understand what's at stake. In its efforts to get the lawsuit filed by Byron Allen dismissed, Comcast has taken a legal approach that could weaken fundamental civil rights protections. I have a problem with this. The Civil Rights Act of 1866, Section 1981, was designed to ensure black people are able to do business in this country and not be denied because of race. Comcast is arguing that this law only applies if racial discrimination is the only factor that leads to a refusal to do business, which would be extremely hard to prove. If they are successful, it will become much harder for any victim of discrimination to seek justice in court. By taking this stance in the Supreme Court, Comcast has put its legal tactics ahead of the rights of millions of Americans to be heard. This is not okay. Above anything else, my goal has always been to achieve true economic inclusion for black people. How can Comcast suggest that it champions diversity and inclusion if it attacks the laws that provide the foundation for economic inclusion? What good are any of their efforts if they are fighting to make it harder for victims of discrimination to be heard in court? Comcast has made this about much more than Byron Allen, and now the civil rights of my children and my community are at stake. To be clear, Anything that makes it harder to fight against discrimination is wrong. Comcast is choosing to be on the wrong side of history. On Revolt, I can only share the truth of my experience. Starting an independent cable network is incredibly difficult and capital intensive. The start we received from Comcast, which was a condition of the United States government approval for Comcast to acquire NBC Universal, was important. But it is not the level of support needed to build a successful African-American owned network. Not even close. Since that launch, our relationship has not grown, and Revolt is still not carried by Comcast in the most affordable packages, nor is Revolt available in all of the markets that would enable us to serve our target audience. Comcast spends billions of dollars on content network every year, but just a few million go to African-American owned networks like Revolt. That is unacceptable. Supporting diversity and economic inclusion requires a real partnership. The only way Black-owned networks grow and thrive is with meaningful and consistent economic support. Otherwise, they are set up to fail. Revolt has never been in a position to truly compete on a fair playing field because it has not received the economic and distribution support necessary for real economic inclusion. Our relationship with Comcast is the illusion of economic inclusion. Rather than using this case to diminish the civil rights protections of millions of Americans, Comcast should use this as an opportunity to listen to a community it relies on and above all do better. That was Diddy. That was yesterday. Well, today, Paula Madison, one of the owners of the Africa Channel and a former NBC Universal executive, issued her own statement. Quote, "The Africa Channel's relationship with Comcast has been cordial and at times even jovial, but our economic relationship cannot be described as a good one. Yes, Comcast is distributing TAC in business since 2005, and my family's investment business is the largest shareholder to about 4 million subscribers, but it has not meaningfully expanded our subscriber base beyond about 2 million Comcast subscribers. In 2011, during the Memorandum of Understanding process, TAC requested that Comcast count it among the 3 channels it will launch, believing those new channels would be distributed to tens of millions of Comcast subscribers. Because TAC was already carrying approximately 2 million Comcast households, TAC was denied and told we were ineligible. Indeed, Comcast is the largest distributor of our small, independent cable network. At that time, Comcast assured the leaders of the NAACP, National Action Network, the National Urban League, that Comcast would increase TAC's subscriber count from 2 million to 6 million, which for a small, independent cable network would have resulted in a palpable economic boost. Eventually, TAC received just half of the promised increase. Since then, TAC has been in conversations with Comcast regarding the additional cable carriage. We have been told that carrying TAC on demand might be a possible solution. The representative said Comcast is considering networks with 0 to very low license fees. And so with virtually no leverage, we offered to reduce our carriage fee or even agree to a flat fee in exchange for wider distribution. We still believe that a loss in carriage revenues would be offset by increased advertising revenue generated by a larger subscriber base. But Comcast has consistently dismissed those requests. TAC has been an extraordinarily good partner by supporting all of Comcast's multicultural initiatives, such as sponsoring the Adunde Festival, the largest African gathering in Philadelphia, home of Comcast, as well as other Xfinity VOD marketing initiatives targeting the African-American community, but to no meaningful reciprocity. Although Comcast has not shut out TAC, Comcast has not been a good business partner. With an unkept yet repeated promise by Comcast of 4 million additional subscribers, it's inaccurate to include TAC in any grouping of Black-owned independent networks, which would typify the Comcast business relationship as good or in any way proactive. During the MOU process, I met with Chicago Congressman Bobby Rush as part of the congressional approval process. We met in his D.C. office, and he asked me to assure him that Comcast will continue the innovative and meaningful progress in diversity and inclusion that, as NBCU's EVP and Chief Diversity Officer, I had led at NBCU. I assured Congressman Rush that I did not know if the Comcast folks would do so and certainly had no way of predicting this. I did say that GE NBCU's parent company, was an industry leader regarding diversity and inclusion, and that NBCU was an industry leader regarding diversity and inclusion, and that Comcast was promising Congress that it would work for greater economic success for the African American community, as stated by the commitments regarding procurement, banking, employment, etc. I said that I was meeting with him as one of my assigned responsibilities to fulfill what was needed to secure for Comcast the government approval to acquire and own NBCU. I said I was taking Comcast at its word. Launching these black entrepreneurs' new cable networks without meaningful distribution and real economic inclusion, in my opinion, would result in a business model fraught with frustration and near futility. As the NBCU team leader who worked on and negotiated the MOU with the African American civil rights leaders, separately, I had raised with Comcast that without a guaranteed subscriber count giving the black entrepreneurs significant revenue and profit, the launch of these channels would not help them achieve success in business. Indeed, as an owner of the Africa Channel, I recused myself from any Comcast TAC discussions, but I also knew from my experience that without the key components of a guaranteed number of subscribers and revenue, running a profitable cable network would be very problematic. I shared these concerns with Comcast that the African American networks would be positioned to fail, and Comcast made it clear that it was only committed to launching these networks and not giving them the necessary distribution and economic support to succeed. Period. None of the black-owned networks sought cable carriage solely with Comcast. We all sought carriage on Time Warner, Charter, Cox, etc. However, Comcast was seeking to acquire one of the largest content creators in the world, NBC Universal. And for that reason, Congress legislated that Comcast enter the MOU. Comcast was bound by the agreement to launch the cable networks, but was not bound to distribute to a requisite number of household/subscribers, so the channels never had a good chance of having a profitable and successful business. The amount of money black cable network owners get from their business relationship with Comcast can only be characterized as very small. In fact, Comcast spends in excess of $12 billion in licensing cable networks, of which black-owned networks receive a negligible amount. Because the Africa Channel has been included in Comcast citations, which suggested that we are in a good business relationship, I'm writing this statement to set the record straight. I felt compelled to speak up and tell the truth for many reasons, especially after reading the falsehoods spread by Brian Roberts and David Cohen of Comcast. As someone who was a corporate insider and helped to craft the MOU, I can honestly say that after reading Sean Diddy Combs' official statement about Comcast, he has every reason to feel the way he does. In fact, I considered some weeks ago filing an amicus brief to Byron Allen's lawsuit, but after communicating with my fellow Vassar College alum Sherilyn Eiffel, the Legal Defense Fund, I decided not to do so. I'm convinced there are a number of amicus briefs filed with SCOTUS that I believe make a positive and convincing argument that his case must be allowed to continue. I also spoke with National Association of Black Journalists President Dorothy Tucker, expressing my great concern that the Civil Rights Act of 1866 would be gutted by Comcast and U.S. Attorney General Barr. So I encourage NABJ, of which I'm a lifetime member, to speak out, and indeed NABJ has done so. After watching Comcast's actions regarding the statute, I'm now convinced that I have to speak up. Again, this is the reason I am writing this statement.
Well, that's a mouthful, two mouthfuls. I think what these folks are talking about is just the way this firm wants to use them, right, to really browbeat this other black man and giving up his case, or at least beat him in court by saying, hey, I got these other black people, there's nothing to see here. And what they're saying is, actually, you have not even followed through on your commitments to us, so don't use us this way, in part because what they want to do, what Comcast is seeking to do, is basically say, unless we have said we want to keep all the black people from doing business, then there's no case here, which essentially means that there is no law here, and there's no protection here, because it's not just about discriminatory outcomes. It's like, I have have to prove the intent, which I think is a complete violation of the spirit of the law. And I think you have folks who are looking at themselves in a powerful position, and actually Comcast emboldened and empowered them by using them as your sort of markers and the people who define your diversity initiatives. And those folks are saying, wait a minute, Comcast actually hasn't done what not only they promised us, they haven't done what they promised Congress, that they have actually been in violation of their agreements with us. So Byron Allen is just sort of the latest manifestation of the ways in which Comcast wants to continue to do business, and we're not going to allow ourselves to be used to oppress another black man and keep him from his opportunity.
But not just black. Robert Rodriguez, his network, the El Rey Television Network, which Comcast launched in 2010, this is what he said on Friday, quote, while we are grateful for the opportunity Comcast gave us as the first distributor to launch our networks to service our communities, we want to be very clear that they had significantly more to gain financially. That's what he told Cable Facts Daily, and he was agreeing with Sean Diddy Combs. But here's the thing, Ray, that also has to be done here. The MOU that was signed by those civil rights organizations, you needed business people negotiating those. You needed people who understood the industry negotiating those. Because if anybody who knew the industry, they would have said, no, you got to guarantee distribution. See, just saying you can have a record label is one thing. But if you got no access to the places that are going to play your stuff, it don't matter. And that's the real deal here. And this is no disrespect to any of our civil rights organizations. But I will dare say this. The problem with that MOU was it was weak. You cannot say, hey, just launch a network. No, you got to say, no, not just launch a network, carry them on all of your systems, and don't put them on the upper tiers. Put them on the lowest tier, because BET is the only black network that is on the basic tier because they were the first. That's it. And so what happens is, I know for a fact when I was at TV One, they will put the black networks on the tier as with HBO and Showtime. So that means that black people, to get the black networks, had to pay the highest cable bills in order to see us. So even though we were in 55, 58 million homes, we were available in that many homes. But how many could afford us?
How many could afford us? And then further, how many are accessing it, right? We all know that when we sit and flick through our cable channels, there's perhaps a range of channels in which folks traditionally move through, whatever your normal programming may be, likely your local channels, and then some extras as well. But when you put some of the other channels in channel 1,694 and all the other channels are 210 through 211 through 290, that changes the way folks will view things. That will change your advertising revenue. That will change a host of things. Further, Comcast has demonstrated a pattern that it is willing to use black networks, black media, black content creators time and again to serve whatever aims they have. Whether that aim is an acquisition of a larger property, whether that aim is to dispel a lawsuit that they're fighting against, Comcast has time and again shown that they are willing to profile, highlight, and put on Front Street their black friends, so to speak. And at no point do they, forgive me for going, at no point do they ever show any meaningful interest to develop, nurture, and curate black content, but they want to share their black friend. And I like that Diddy statement is so eloquent, so well articulate, and so knowledgeable about both the law, about the application of carriage, about the application of content. And as Diddy says in his raps, it's very true about his PR statements. Don't worry if I write PR statements, I write checks.
My question is, what would happen if all the black media company owners like yourself, all these moguls, what would happen if we started our own network?
No, but that, no.
The same problem that we're having right now? The same problem we're having right now.
The issue is not starting your own network. That's not the issue. They started the networks.
Okay.
It's distribution.
Yes.
See, you could start a network.
So we still have to go through somebody like Comcast.
That's the distribution network.
So they're the only ones.
So unless unless you're talking about the Time Warner type deal, the DirecTV, AT&T,
here's what you have. You have Comcast, which is the largest cable provider in the country. Okay, by 21 million homes. You have Charter. Okay, they absorbed what used to be Time Warner Cable. Then you have DirecTV. Then you have Dish. Those are your satellite providers.
Right.
Then you have a whole bunch of other smaller cable operators. That's what you have right now. So you have to go to each one of them to get a carriage deal. So you can sign a deal with a Comcast that it's called not an MOS, but multiple operator system. So you can sign a deal with Comcast. But what we had to do is we had to go to each individual market. So what happens is in cities, a cable network has the cable franchise.
Okay.
That's granted by the city government. And so in that city, the city council votes on, you get the city's cable franchise, just one. Now, it was a lot of drama when Verizon Fios came in, and then when AT&T Uverse came in because they were not cable, they were fiber optic. The cable systems were fighting them, saying, no, y'all got to go through the same approval process as us. That's why in some places you had access to Verizon Fios, AT&T Uverse, as well as the local cable deal. And so then what happened, and that typical deal, it may run anywhere from 7 to 10 years. Okay? So they essentially are the exclusive provider for that market. That's it. And so some markets are charter markets. Some markets are Comcast markets. Then some of the cable companies. And so we had to go to individuals. So when the Washington Post owned a cable system, it was in Mississippi. It was a city was 70% black. The Donald Graham was next door neighbors with the CEO of TV One. So they kept telling us on a corporate level, hey, we got no problem with TV One. We go down to Mississippi, and the local general manager like, ain't nobody asking for TV One. Now, we knew they were lying. It's 70% black. But that local GM decided whether or not we would do a deal. So we would have to put on events, and we would have to draw up, interest among the public. But then here's the problem. If you got caught encouraging folks to write in, they could ban you from other networks across the country. Doc, I'm trying to tell you.
Wow.
TV, you gotta understand, I know this because I had to live it.
Right.
TV One, Jonathan Rogers, the founding CEO of TV One, he's the first CEO of TV One, sent me across America to do events in black communities to get black folks to request TV One. I went to Rochester, New York. I went to Buffalo, New York. I went to Fort Worth, Texas. I went to San Antonio. I went to Charleston, South Carolina. I went to Savannah, Georgia. Went to all around the country, putting on these events. This is who we are to get black folks interested. And we have to do all of that. Now, Comcast could have said, we're going to put you on all of our systems.
Kill all that in one move.
So that's also. So you have Revolt, to my understanding, not even being carried in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And Revolt's like, hello, all the black folks in Philly?
Yep.
And so that's what you got going on here. So it's been very interesting. And so I'll say this here. For Diddy and for Paula Madsen with the Africa Channel to drop these letters and lay this out, if I'm Comcast, I'm like, damn, we are not winning this war. And if you look on Twitter, Comcast has been loading up on tweets showing all their multicultural efforts. These letters and what Robert Rodriguez had to say, trust me, is not going to see. Now, granted, the people who did Afro TV also wrote a letter praising their working relationship with Comcast. But these other folks who Comcast has been touting, been like, nah, that ain't the case.
And that's what happens, though. You put these people's name out there, and now people are like, oh, now we got to respond and tell the truth of what the relationship is. They have not done what they promised. Exactly. They haven't done what they promised, and what they want to do is use us to harm this other black man, and we're not going to be used in that way, because the real sort of power in this moment is not in sort of siding with Comcast and staying quiet, right? It's siding with this person, because everybody has a lot to gain here, right? It's not just by absolutely they've been affected by it.
And I think, and people also don't. I mean, the reality is that look, this is a fight between Byron Allen and Comcast. But what it also is exposing are some of the underbelly of what happens in the industry.
Absolutely.
And that's what people don't understand, because your carriage and your subscription fees is what drives your revenue. And so what happens is when you sign a cable, people don't realize, when you sign a cable deal, some of these cable deals are 5 years. Some of them are 7 years. So what happens is you negotiate a deal with the Comcast or Charter or anyone, and let's say you say it's Comcast, and they say, okay, 10 million subs, okay? Get a calculator out. You go, all right, so you're gonna pay us 10 cents per sub. So that's 10 million subs. Again, if it's 10 million times that 10 cents, that means we making $1 million every month. That means we're getting solely on subscription fees 12 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
That means that if I sign a deal, it's a 5-year carriage deal, I can go to the bank and say, I'm getting 60 million over the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. Now, I need 200 million for programming to run my network. Mm-hmm. That's what the carriage fee battle is all about, and that's what people are now understanding the intricacies of the market. And so when a person says, "Well, damn, man, I would love to have TV One, I would love to have, Revolt, but damn, you're in that upper tier, so I can't afford that, so I'm gonna pay for that basic tier or the one right above." Mm-hmm. I never can see your network because you're forcing me. The cable system are placing them on the upper tier by design.
Mm-hmm. Well,
final comment, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, rarely in history of ever has someone been one of the folks that are being sued in a lawsuit. And then when they get dropped from that, do they join an amicus brief that supports the people that were suing them? That's what happened here with the NAACP. Because Byron Allen was alleging that the NAACP and the other civil rights organizations, in signing the MOU, would, to your point, Roland, had been negligent in their duties to ensure the protections of civil rights. And so once the NAACP was dropped from that, now we see the NAACP signing the amicus brief. That's what we see Ms. Madison alluding to. And lastly, one of the things that Comcast definitely doesn't want to have happen is if this case goes forward, there will be depositions, right? And so no one in the history of ever wants to sit for a deposition.
Because if you get subpoenaed,
so yeah, and so
Diddy,
if they can dismiss this, if they can dismiss this, that's fine. But all that stuff that Diddy's talking about, all that stuff that Ms. Madison, Mr. Rodriguez are saying in their statements, those things become unsworn under oath, and all of Comcast's
But they could have fixed it.
business.
They could have fixed it back in the Ninth Circuit. When they lost, they could have said, all right, we're going to go ahead, we lost, we're going to pay you and be done with it. They decided to challenge it.
Well, how long have you been observing capitalism in America?
Right.
When do people lose? When do people lose and go, you beat?
I would be very interested, Mel, to see what happens in this case where Lowndes County, Alabama Sheriff Big John Williams was shot to death on Saturday at a gas station where people often hung out. They had a call there about loud noise there. He approached a truck to ask them to turn the noise down, and it was when this young man, William Chase Johnson, the son of a Montgomery County Sheriff's deputy, who shot and killed the sheriff. They were looking for him. He returned later, it was around midnight, with the gun, walked up and said, "I did it," and turned himself in. Unfortunately, talk about a sad case, Big John Williams, his own son, was actually at that gas station and witnessed his father being gunned down. Just a shocking story. This was a beloved black sheriff, worked there for about 40 years there in Lowndes County, Alabama. And so you would hope that a jury there will seek the death penalty against this young man who shot and killed this sheriff. But it also shows you again the uneven justice where in this one case, a cop who kills a black man who is found guilty of manslaughter and not murder. The question now then becomes, will you have this white kid who kills a black sheriff? Then what will likely be the charge and what will likely be the decision, the verdict as well? Malik, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have little doubt that the white guy who killed the sheriff down there in Alabama will be convicted, and he probably will get the death penalty. I just don't have any doubt about that at all. If you think about what we're talking about here, it's really, violence against police officers, and it really doesn't matter whether you are a white police officer or a black police officer. If you harm one, chances are, if you actually make it to jail without being shot or killed first, the jury's pretty much is going to convict you. The other case that you were referencing about the cop, this is just another, it's another example of what we've seen in other areas around the country where juries themselves find it very difficult to convict police officers, whether it's a white police officer or a black police officer. But as far as Alabama is concerned, I imagine, despite the fact that he is the sheriff's son, not the sheriff's son, Yeah,
deputy sheriff.
The deputy sheriff's son.
Deputy sheriff's son.
Deputy sheriff's son. I just have little doubt that a jury is not going to convict him. Like he's going down for.
I don't know about that.
Got it, Julian.
I don't know that he's going down. White folks pull all kind of rabbits out of the hat in order to make excuses. Maybe he was crazy. You know, anytime someone, mental incapacity, something like that. I mean, he should be thrown up under the jail because violence against a police officer is often seen as a greater form of violence. But I'm not sure, and I want to know, actually, why does his daddy still have a job? Because if that was his father, he learned how to hate black people from his father. He learned how to do it in his home. Now, to the other case with the white police officer being found guilty, what I think about that, Roland, is that happens so rarely. It happens so rarely. I'm not going to see it. Kelly says it causes her to have hope. It doesn't cause me to have hope. It's like a black swan. It so happens so infrequently that while it's correct, it's not. I don't see it as a trend.
I'm just trying to be optimistic.
Well, I'm just trying to be realistic.
I know. I'm usually realistic, but I'm just like, it's Alabama.
Well, you know, we have to take hope wherever we can, but we also have to be realistic whenever we can.
I agree.
And you know, as Malik said, this is the state of Alabama. This is the state of Alabama, y'all. So, you know, Jeff Sessions country.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
This is Diala Riddle, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay woke.
This is Director X, the director of Superfly on the red carpet, or the black carpet, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Yo, what up, y'all? This is Jay Ellis, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, I'm Chaley Rose, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
I'm Lex Scott Davis, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Jacob Lattimore, and you're now watching Roland Martin right now.
You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? The blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play.